Stop it. You gotta be kidding. That's amazing. Wow. Give me chicken skin, man. That's crazy. Wow. I asked my daughter what she wanted for Christmas. She says, Dad, I just want you to be home. So it just triggered for me, my kids, my daughter Taylor and my son Connor. We spend great times together, very close. And so it was more meaningful around her just having me home. And I started really thinking, I gotta move on and see what of these things are gonna work out and how the timing lines up. We're asset managers. The mission for us is to create value for the ownership groups that we work for. We're deeply rooted in Hawaii, so we understand this place, we understand the people, we understand the culture. We really have to ensure that there is a better relationship between the community and the industry so that we can continue to support the GDP that it develops. Our legs are just all chopped up, all blood, just all scraped up because you're just running through the rocks and just getting all busted up. And so you just laughed. So my cousin and I jumped out and we body surfed like by ourselves, which is just perfect sets for half an hour to 45 minutes. And then he went in, we swam in, and it's those moments that are just epic. You just can't forget those. They're just precious. A lot of what I do inside and out of work does revolve around trying to deliver to those who are less fortunate. And that kind of stems from my mom's teaching for 47 years in the DOE. She was a great teacher. She would step in my house. I'd be sleeping, done at homework, 9 o'clock. She'd be up touring my classmates at 12 o'clock at night because they wanted to go to college. She would just put in her heart and soul to her kids.
Greater Good Radio, connect, learn, heal, and grow, is brought to you by Brain Gain Hawaii, a boutique executive recruiting, career development, and coaching firm. Learn more at braingainhi.com. Welcome to Greater Good Radio. Today we're with Elliot Mills, the CEO and managing partner of Hawaii Hospitality Group. And thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So you have kind of a lengthy bio, right? But as I was thinking about it this morning, if I want to understand who you are, how would you introduce yourself?
Well, I would say, first of all, I'm from the Big Island, which is a little locator from Hamakua Coast, from a small little, I like to call it, village of Laupoihoi. Small family.
Is that the Kona side or what's that?
Hamakua side. Hamakua side, about maybe 25 miles north of Hilo. And I mean, I think who I am starts with where I came from. Obviously, a great family. My dad and my mom's side, the Toledo family, and the Mills side. And so brought up in a very tight family environment. And that's where I think I gained, my values and really set into foundation who I am as an individual. Comes from my family, my mom, my dad, grandparents, cousins, aunties and uncles, and friendships along the way that instilled in me the values that make me who I am today.
Brothers and sisters or just you?
One sister, 5 years younger, Christy.
Okay.
So she's here on Oahu now, but just one sibling.
And then your family history, your lineage is from Big Island?
So on my dad's side, lineage is Big Island up to Kohala. My great-grandfather took on Mills' name as a Hanai name. Their original name was Kala on his side from the Hamakua Coast. And then my grandmother is a Lincoln from Kohala. So the Lincolns are related to the Bells and the Lindsays and that whole crew up there. And then on my mom's side, it's primarily Portuguese, German, English. So my great-grandfather came from Portugal, from the Azores, to help build the plantations on the Hamakua Coast.
Wait, so how did the Mills name come into play? What's the story behind that?
Yeah, so my great-grandfather got adopted by Mills family, and so he took on their name. Yeah.
And then Mills were recent to Hawaii, or they've been in Hawaii a long time?
Unfortunately, we don't have a whole lot of information on that side of it. We have information on my great-grandfather. However, we don't have too much information on the Hanai family that took him in. As you know, the Hawaiians don't really share a whole lot. My grandmother, she gave us just as much as we needed to know, and that was it. But my cousin folks have done a lot of work in trying to research, but that part of it is tough to find out. My grandmother's part of it is more built out because everything is in genealogy. Mm-hmm. My grandfather's side, it wasn't so much so.
So if you take the genealogy back, as far as however you want to go, is there a story or something significant in there that will help me to understand like who you are?
Yeah, I think where I come from, there's been a lot of generations on my grandmother's side, on that side, on the Hawaiian side, that you can trace all the way back, like, many generations past. On my great-grandfather's side, on my grandpa's side, it goes to William Clark Mills. And so if you go into Bishop Museum, his name is actually on the list of those who were protesting the takeover. And that's pretty much as far as we go on that side. As far as his father and his mother, there's traces of what we understand to be true, but there's nothing really in writing. So we cannot really trace back almost beyond that. There's a few things that we've looked at, and my cousin folks have taken a deep dive into it, but there's really not much more on that side of the family to kind of trace down.
Is there any story in there that is meaningful to you?
I think my grandfather on my dad's side obviously had a rough upbringing, you can tell. As much as he was supposedly 100% Hawaiian, I really thought he had part Chinese. And just the way, his mannerisms, the way he looked and everything else. So, back in those days, not much recorded, a lot going back and forth, a lot of different marriages, a lot of Hanai, situations going on there. So it's really hard to get a full story. But what I know from just talking to my grandmother and my grandfather, that they were tough times. They grew up in very difficult environment on the Hamakua side. And the value of work and work ethic was definitely instilled in us as kids from the very, very short beginning of when we were very young. So,
and then how did you get your name?
Kawaiho olana. So my grandmother, Elaine, named me, and it comes from, the typical naming process that they go through. She slept on it and thought on it and dreamt on it. And the name basically means the waters that run still and deep. And so there's like an undercurrent that's steady, that's somewhat calm and moving slowly. And that was the name that she gave me when I was born.
Do you know anything else about that name?
For the most part, it holds kind of true as to the way I kind of operate in general. Try to keep an even demeanor over time. It's been a little bit, before I even knew what the name meant in true form, till I got a little bit older and had a conversation about it with her. Yeah, it is a little bit about how my personality is in general. So it's somewhat befitting, as she must have got it right from the beginning when I was young. But yeah, she told me she spent a lot of time thinking on it and dreaming on it and praying on it. And I was just glad that I was able to get named by her. My daughter was the last great-grandchild that she named. And her name is Kapua Maiole. And that was the last great-grandchild that she named before she passed.
What does that mean?
The flower that never fades, like it's the flower that keeps blooming. It's constantly vibrant and it will never fade. Kapua and Mai is no, and Ole is to continue to live, So I guess it's of her continuing to be vibrant and alive constantly, and that's really her personality. Yeah.
When I talked to you last week, the big theme for me was koho'ia, right? I think I mentioned that to you.
Yeah.
And koho'ia, explained to me from John DeFries, was when your destiny chooses you, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have a choice. I thought about it as like the universe is volunteering you. You know what I mean? He talked about his ancestral bones were buried on the land, that the job that he was supposed to take on, and he was wondering if he should do it and so on. And it was like, hey, this is your koho'ia.
Yeah.
It chose you. So I did something that I don't normally do, which is research, but I did it. And your name popped up. And then I started to look at it because I was trying to research the company, but there was nothing on the company. It showed your name. I was like, oh, that's an interesting name. Let me put the name and do some research on your name. Okay? Can I share this with you?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so Kawaiho olana, right? The literal meaning is the water, right? Kawai. And ho'olana is like in which one floats carefree.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's the literal meaning. The symbolic meaning could be like floating, free of burdens, letting go of kind of heavy thoughts and peace, right? Mm-hmm. Like life's flow, like water moving steadily, teaching us to move through change and trust rather than resistance. Okay? Then we move into the huna meaning, the spiritual kind of more meaning. The conduit of mana, right? So mana being our life force, the energy, the power, whatever you want to call that. So water, which carries the spiritual power, Kawaiho olana represents a channel connecting the seen, which is the physical world, with the unseen, the spirit world, inviting us to be conduits of healing energy. And then it said the balance of selves. Water's harmony mirrors the huna goal of balancing the uhane, the higher self, unihipili, our subconscious, and unihivai, our body, to help us integrate mind, body, and spirit. And a little bit more into the spiritual meaning, which was rebirth and renewal, because springs are birthplaces of streams symbolizing new beginnings, and continual renewal of spirit.
Wow.
And sanctuary, which is a sacred resting place where one connects with Aina land and ancestors, embodying the aloha and care that flows from place to person. Okay.
It's pretty deep.
The spring, Kawaiho olana. Do you know who used to bathe in that?
Well, which spring are you talking about?
Kawaiho olana.
Where is it, though? Because I didn't really even existed.
It's a spring. Queen Ka'ahumanu would bathe in that. And she named that area to make it so that she could feel careless in the waters.
Where is it?
It runs beneath this building.
Stop it. You gotta be kidding. That's amazing. What incredible.
You are sitting on Kawaiho
Interesting.
olana.
Wow, man, give me chicken skin, man.
Bruh, I don't know where this one's going today.
Wow.
But this came together just
That's crazy.
that.
That's crazy. Wow. That's amazing. I should have looked that up in advance myself.
I was like, holy cow.
That's crazy. Yeah.
What is the deal?
Wow. Do you know where it was specifically on this run?
It said that because of the way that the spring was, the developments and so on, it's probably chunked up, but it's somewhere between here and Manoa Road.
Wow. That's amazing. You know, it's funny because I was just talking to Afatia Thompson yesterday about a naming, and we're looking at a project down in Ala Moana. And we're just talking about all these rivers that used to run through here. 40 different rivers used to come through down to, the Waikiki, Ala Moana area. And that's exactly what I was talking about yesterday. And naming that development something.
Yeah.
And we were talking about waters. We're talking about healing. We're talking about springs. We're talking about, the vai and the richness of the water and what the water brings to our people. And, same vein. You were looking it up, and I was probably talking about it.
So that brings us today,
Yeah.
which is that's why I said I'm super excited for today, because I'm like, I don't know why. I don't do research on it. I popped this one up and went, holy cow, this is nuts.
That is pretty crazy. Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
So I went a little bit farther. I said, how does this work in with your full name?
Yeah.
You know what Elliot means?
I don't actually, never looked it up.
The root meaning from Hebrew, Eliyahu, my God or Yahweh or Jehovah is God. So spiritual layer is a name that calls one to live in remembrance of and under the guidance of a higher power. It reminds you of your strength and purpose is rooted in something greater than yourself. Kawaiho olana, the water which one floats carefree, right?
Mm-hmm.
Surrender, healing, and renewal. The channeling of mana from what's intangible to tangible.
Mm-hmm.
And mills, which is an English occupational surname for someone who worked or owned a mill, with the spiritual layer meaning turning something that's raw grain into nourishment. So when you look at this, it says, together the name calls Elliot to walk a path of divine guidance, carefree surrender, and transformative service. Under the banner of my God is Yahweh, he's invited to trust in that guidance that he floats in the healing waters of Kawaiho olana, and then mill those insights into relatable stories and compassionate acts that nourish his ohana and community. In essence, Elliot Kawaiho olana mills is a living reminder to live faithfully, float freely, and transform boldly, bearing witness to both ancestral mana and everyday grace.
That's a very kind description. I have to say, I do have a very spiritual tie that tries to live up to those, that description and that type of life. But it's a task every day, right? You got to keep working at it. But yeah, there's definitely a spiritual side to me that definitely wants me to deliver on those descriptors.
Might be a
doubt.
kohoia.
Kohoia. True, right.
Because that's where it was going next, right? Which is, if you think about it, then it goes, you're taking in, and I guess we're going out there today, but you're taking in kind of the grace of God flowing through calm waters. So whatever is in that space can be carefree, and then transmuting that into a physical factor or form that nourishes.
Mm-hmm.
So keeping that in mind for today's light conversation, how does that express?
I think a lot of what I do, I would say inside and out of work, does revolve around trying to deliver value to those who are less fortunate, specifically around, a lot of my nonprofit work, my passion for it is around kids. And that kind of stems from my mom's teaching for 47 years in the DOE. And somewhat difficult in the districts throughout Hawaii, and just seeing the deficit and how the kids work through their lives in time, and just seeing that over many, many years definitely left an impression on me with regard to what service I want to be providing in my nonprofit and my free time. So a lot of it has been driven around kids' education, kids' health. Obviously, I've tried to focus within the Native Hawaiian space because I think, our kids, especially in different districts, definitely disadvantaged. And so a lot of the time and effort I put into my nonprofit work is focused around that. My focus and my drive primarily is around trying to change the life cycle of those kids. And it's been extraordinarily rewarding. At the same time, it's been extraordinarily frustrating to just see how slowly we move to change that dynamic for our kids in Hawaii, especially around education, but rewarding at the same time because, every little bit you do and the rest of the organizations do make an impact. So, it's a double-edged sword, but it's been great service though.
So this may be a kind of a lot to take in today, right? Like this piece.
Yeah, it's fairly heavy.
Right? You come in and like, okay, I'm going to talk story. I started with a new company. It's like, what the heck is?
Yeah, it's okay though.
But
It
it's
is
like,
real.
to me, it's like, oh, this is an opening for something interesting.
Yeah.
Like, what can we discover around this? Like, what does this mean?
I think it's going to be somewhat, I'm going to walk out of here and kind of look back and think about this for quite a while and try to get some introspection around what it does mean and kind of think about it over the next few
That's
days.
super common.
Yeah.
For
Well, I'm
this
sure,
space.
yeah. Obviously, with something like this, and I never took it that far with regard to what it all means, but I definitely can relate though, because it's definitely, hopefully, what I would want to do to leave a legacy is to execute against those descriptors, man.
You have any kind of recollection of an experience or a story when you were younger that might give some context into this, or even to who you are?
Gosh, man, my youth is filled with incredible stories because we lived on the Hamakua Coast and we lived pretty freely. So we ran around like, renegades around the place with my cousins and just had a blast. A lot of learnings through those experiences, good and bad. But I think, one of the longest memories I've had is my dad and my mom left me with my uncle Merle Toledo down in Waipio Valley for, I want to say, probably a week. I was fairly young, and I want to say I was maybe like 9 or 10 or 8 or whatever have you. And it left an insanely long impression on me with regard to the valley and the spirituality of the valley and just the amount of work and effort that goes into that farming of the kalo and how you care for those streams and everything that goes into what our culture was built on. And so it had a super lasting impression, and I've always gone back to Waipio as kind of a place of refuge for me to kind of regroup, reset myself. And my cousin Morgan, who just passed last year, was one of those guys who just was so locked in with the Aina. And he wasn't even Hawaiian. He was Filipino Portuguese, but, the blood ran through him, better than anybody else I saw down there or ever since. And he just taught me tremendous amounts of lessons, of values, and just different aspects of life that you're just not going to get if you're not down there living it day in and day out, untethered. So, I can go into different storylines here and there about what we did each and every day throughout that week and many days past that. But just the mana down there, the people, the struggle, the work, the culture, and all the meaning, how great a place it is and how meaningful it is to the history of our culture and our people is something that just will never leave me. It's been an incredible impact on my life.
Do you have a story that can help us to feel what you're feeling?
Gosh, there's been so many nights there that, where you just think that there's just a higher power out there. You're sitting down there under the stars and the moon and sleeping outside, and it's overwhelming emotionally, spiritually, especially after you've covered the land, if you went hunting or if you went fishing or if you were working in the lo'i. All those things come together and it puts you in a space, a mindset that is very self-reflective and very deep, right? Spiritually deep. And those stories, I can put myself in that space pretty immediately, pretty quickly, and reflect back on those times. It's fantastic. It's hard to explain because you're sitting there amongst your family or friends in whatever capacity you're in, and you just have that feeling of wellness, of connectivity, peace, right, tranquility. And it also gives you time to reflect on what your mission is when you come out of there, right? Mm-hmm. You see what's happening there, you see the work, and it kind of is a cleansing of your soul a little bit. And then you come out of there refreshed, rejuvenated, refocused, and you have some, incredibly deep dreams for whatever reason when I sleep down there. Just deep, deep, deep sleep.
When's the last time you went?
It's probably been about a year, not even more, staying down there in the valley because my cousin passed away. So his family's now running the Tarapash down there now. Yeah.
Your cousin that passed away, what's your favorite memory?
Favorite memory with him is probably we would then venture on because Waipio, we wanted to go beyond that higher part to the next higher part, which is Waimanu Valley, which is the next valley over. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you a fun story. So we would do this as a kind of a pilgrimage every year almost during usually the July 4th area, right in the middle of summer, long days, calm waters. And so we would take a Zodiac out from the bay and circle all the way around to Waimanu and then basically take the family out, one by one, and then set up tent down there and stay down there for like a week. And so sometimes the waves get pretty big. Me and my cousin Lance, he's in the Zodiac, and we're taking stuff over. It's getting late in the night. It's the last run over. And the way basically the sets came up, it's, probably 4 to 5 feet in the bay. And we got to push him out of the river through the initial sets so he can hit the engine and it's not going to catch sand, and we take off. And basically, you got to push and you just got to hold on to the handles and you just get dragged through the waves and so we're crawling through the river mouth and we're just getting sliced up by the rocks. So he says, okay, hit it, we're going. So he would push, running through the waves, and he hits the engine and we're just getting pounded through the waves, just getting knocks. And then we get into the Zodiac, we sit in there and he looks at us and he just starts laughing. And I go, what's up, Morgan? He says, brother, you guys are a mess. I said, what's the matter? He says, look down. Our legs were just all chopped up, all blood, just all scraped up because you're just running through the rocks and just getting all busted up. And so he just laughed. So we just got out and we got back into Waimanu. We pulled up just shy of the beach, right where the waves are breaking. So my cousin and I jumped out and we body surfed like by ourselves, which is just perfect sets for like, half an hour to 45 minutes. And then he went in, we swam in, and, it's those moments that are just epic. You just can't forget those. It's just something else. It's just precious. Yeah.
And that's when the ocean was clean.
Yeah, it's still,
you'd be scared of
down there is pretty clean.
Oh, still yet?
Oh, yeah. It's down there. It's pristine. Yeah. There's so much action down there that it cleans itself up pretty well. Yeah. No problem there. Yeah. So beautiful.
What's the learning lesson in that you take with you that you hold with you now still yet?
It's the simple things in life, right? It's just the time. I think right now our lives are so complicated, if you want to call it, so on a wheel that you can never really have too much time to sit down and take in the very simple things in life without the phone and do things like that. It just makes you focus in on the here and now and your family and take in some of those precious moments and create memories, in a very natural setting like that, very peaceful, no outside influences. And I really miss doing that. We've been trying to get back there, but it's so difficult not to break away and take the time to be, and you're completely out of touch and true camping. So it's hard to do that these days, with everything that's going on and kids and work and school and all that stuff. But those are the simple moments that I just value so much. A lot of time for introspection when you're in that space.
That'd be interesting if you went like soon and then contemplate on the stuff that we, you know what I mean?
Well, I'm
That
planning
we're
to go
discussing.
soon.
Yeah.
I just was with his daughter who works with me at Aulani, who used to work with me at Aulani 2 days ago. And so hopefully we'll get down there this summer. Yeah. Enjoy some of that.
So I'm going to give you this too then, because this is what I had.
Yeah, I'd love to take that and check
Take
this
that.
out and kind of noodle on this. And this is going to be a good meditation for me every morning. Yeah, excellent. Very, very good. Yeah, I love it. Love it.
I noticed too that there's a good chunk of local business leaders that are from Big Island,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Like
100%.
Dwayne Karisu, Rob Iopa. I mean, there's a bunch. What's up with that? Like, is there something that you know about or you see about being from Big Island that makes you into a leader or something? Or what's going on with this?
To your point, there are some great folks from the Big Island that are leaders in our state. I think if I looked at all the folks who are, leaders, as well as people like Home, like Kimo, who became mayor, I just think we have, a very good general value set to start out with, just being brought up there. And not to say that everybody else doesn't, but I do find that similarity with a lot of the guys that I work with from the Big Island is just, grounded, right? Great amount of respect and for the, other people, and just good set of values that they work from They're consistently making decisions based off that value set. Very grounded in community, and for the most part, the culture as well. Don't forget where they came from. They're still the same people that I knew when I was living on the Big Island. And so I don't think they forget their roots, and I think it pays dividends because that respect and that mutual respect for others in our community and in the business, I think, is foundational for success. And I think it pays dividends for them.
Mayor Kimo up there, you grew up with him or what?
Yeah, we went to high school together. We played sports as we were growing up. All the same, crew. Robbie Opa was another one in that space. So yeah, I know him well. Huh. Yeah, good guy. Again,
Darren
grounded.
Kimura?
Darren Kimura. Doesn't ring a bell.
He was with Energy Industries. He started Energy Industries and then was Sopagy, and then now he's a venture capital.
Okay. Yeah, the Kimura family. So
it's like electrical engineer.
My uncle's married to Kimura in the Waimea.
Huh.
No, that if it's the same family.
I think his dad had I think it was electrical engineering or electrician kind of.
He must have been
company.
on Hilo maybe then.
Yeah, Hilo.
Yeah.
Hilo.
That maybe it was a different Hamakua family. Yeah.
Interesting. On that, you think you can move back there?
I'd like to move back to Kamoela in particular. I think that's just God's country up there, the weather. I love it up there. So yeah, I'd like to, spend time up there, have a place up there, maybe move up there. My wife has different thoughts.
Oh.
She likes the town. She's from Vancouver, so she likes being close to convenience and not so stashed away in the countryside. But I might be able to swear. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
So how is it that, a local boy from Big Island ends up being like in your status right now? You know what I mean? Like if you look at it like structurally, you're one of the most influential guys in town, right?
I would.
How does that work? Like what's the path on that? Like,
well, first of all, I wouldn't say I'm the most influential guys in town. Try to contribute where I can, but I think it stems again from my family, like my mom and my dad and my grandparents. Were pushing me constantly to do more, do well, have an impact, get educated, and just work hard. And I think that never left me. It kept me going, kept me striving to do as much as I could and try to be the best at what I wanted to do. And also, I think, my dad has always wanted to say, do what you're passionate about, because then you're not really working. You're actually enjoying what you're doing. And I tried to find what that was. And I found it in the hospitality industry. I was actually going to school for teaching because my mom was a teacher and I really admired what she did. And she had a huge impact on her kids. I mean, massive, changed kids' lives over and over again, even some of my classmates. And so I was going on that track because I just loved what she was doing and I loved the returns that she was getting as a teacher. And then I just got into, I think my junior year, I went to work for the Sheraton Moana as a valet just to get myself through school, kind of make extra money. And I found a love for the industry, getting involved, seeing what was there, the business was about, getting some exposure, and then kind of moved around in different roles throughout the hotel over the course of a few years while I was going to school. And then I switched majors to business. And at that time, it was travel industry management was part of the Scheidler, was part of the business school. And so, yeah, I switched majors and, and the rest is history on that one. I kept going and just loved what we were doing and just kept getting after it, yeah.
Wait, so when you came out, tourism was booming?
No, actually, it's interesting. So it wasn't booming. I mean, in general, tourism has always done well. I think we had not even probably 50% of the visitors we have now. I think it was probably like 5 or 6 million a year. But it was just coming through the Gulf War when I graduated. Yeah. And so
SARS and then Asian financial crisis.
Yeah, it wasn't an awesome time. It wasn't a boom town. I missed the boom, which was like the last 8 years prior to that when all of the Japanese investments came in and they're building these monstrous hotels and all the big brands were expanding. They had hit that height and it was actually kind of a plateau time frame, which was fine. But I had a great opportunity. I was probably the last management trainee class at the Hyatt Regency Waikiki. They used to have like 20 kids in that coming out of college. We were a class of 6. So they were definitely paring it down. So we got fortunate, and the folks that was in there with me. But that laid the foundation. The experience there was great. Got to experience all the different departments. Incredible training opportunity that was presented to me. And then, that laid the foundation for me to move on, obviously, in my career and take on different roles and eventually Disney.
So was there a big turning point or maybe something that was looked like a failure, but then eventually became like a blessing in disguise?
Oh my goodness. Well, there were so many of these because as you can imagine, the hotel industry is unique in that back in the day when things were really booming, people would move every couple years. That's kind of the deal. They'd move hotels, they'd move country, they'd move back into country. And while I was at Marriott, which was the big part of my career, was that they were moving people all over the place. So the industry started to pick back up. And, because I was fairly young in the saddle and right at that rooms division manager type of thing, right on the GM level. So they'd move you around and get you experienced and all that. So I was ready to move out of Hawaii probably, 2 times into Asia, like bags packed, car, ready to jump on the ship type of thing, put on the ship and jump on the plane, and got pulled back for a role here or a role here in the islands just because I was local. And it's hard to find folks to kind of integrate into these different hotels from a leadership perspective, right? When you're bringing in a GM.
You mean you already transferred?
I was going to transfer, and then they pulled at last minute, pulled me back. So I want to say it would have been great to have the experience to work in the Hong Kong or in Thailand or wherever. But I think it was an incredible blessing that I was able to basically stay my entire career in Hawaii.
Kind of like the military then, yeah?
It's like military.
Yeah.
It was like that. And you don't even question it. They have an opportunity, you just go. Because that's how you're going to progress through the industry, right? Is taking opportunities and moving around. But I was able to do it here, which was just a huge blessing. Thanks to my family, live in Hawaii, which is, I think the best place to live in the world, and still progress in my career and have the opportunities that I've had.
I guess if people are in that industry, what would you say is the most important thing you either did or like foundationally was the most important?
I think is looking at all the opportunities and really stretching out and taking the opportunities to move and learn different aspects of the hotel industry. I think is the biggest thing I did that actually, allowed me the opportunities that I've had, just because you get opportunity to see the different aspects of all the different areas that it takes to run a property or a resort, right? So if you're in rooms area, or food and beverage, or sales, or revenue, you want to get as well-rounded as you can so that when you get into the senior leadership role, you can really speak pretty well to all those disciplines, understand it, and really look at it from a strategic standpoint and add value to your team when you're talking about it in general.
You ever thought about leaving it?
Not really. No, I didn't. I mean, I really enjoy it. I love what I do. Ever go to work today, and every day. Really stoked and looking forward to doing what I'm doing every day. So I never looked at leaving it ever, really. There's been opportunities for different things here and there in different areas, but I've always, turned it down for sticking with the industry and hospitality.
So when you say you love it, like what is it that you love?
Well, the primary part of it is I love the people part of it, right? So if you think about it, we go to work, people are coming to vacation with us. They're fairly in decent, mood. They want to enjoy themselves. We want to make them happy. We want to create a good environment for them to enjoy the vacation. And so we try to create an environment for our employees, our cast members to enjoy what they're doing and to create an environment that's rich, that's collaborative, that's transparent, that's a place that people want to come to work. And when you create that, being part of it is fun. It's enjoyable, right? If it works. And that's the part that I think is the best. And we make memories for people that, for a cliche, that last a lifetime. And frankly, we make memories for our employees, right? Because this is their livelihoods, right? They're, taking care of their families, they're educating their families, they're feeding their families off of this work. And if you create a culture that is that rich where everybody can count on each other, it's like a big family. And to have a big family and care for a big family and see the rewards that come out of that is great. It's very enjoyable and it's very rewarding at the end of the day to see all that come out of it, right? And you're also creating careers for other individuals, youth coming out of there. It's just a great place to be.
I heard you say cast member. That's what Disney
That's Disney
teaches, right?
lingo, yeah. So I go back and forth between employee, cast member.
So is that kind of in your DNA now then, like this cast member or what?
I can go back and forth with it because a lot of people won't resonate with cast member. They'll reflect to Disney, but the context of it might be a little bit different. So yeah, sometimes depending on my audience, I'll play into that. But normally, yeah, I can go back and forth relevance-wise.
So Disney came about after Marriott or?
After Marriott, yeah. And to your past question, yeah, they came in when I was at Marriott. We're just coming out of the recession. I think it was 2010. And I was at the Marriott Kauai there, and a headhunter called and said, hey, listen, we're looking to fill this role at this new property that we're opening on Oahu. I had no idea about it. And I said, oh, you know what? I literally just came through the recession. I just had my daughter. I just finished building a house. And Kauai, to me, just like the Big Island, was like heaven, right? I had one of the great surf break in front of me. I had 2 golf courses, beautiful resort, awesome team. And I could have stayed there for 5 years or whatever, right? And so I passed on it. And 2 weeks later, he calls me again and says, I really want you to really consider. And he kind of went down the path of and told me a little bit more about the project. I always looked at Disney as an entertainment company, which they are, right? And not so much a hotel company. And so, I passed again, and he called me again a third time, and I said, listen, you sound like a really nice guy. I really would love to help. He said, if you could introduce us to some people on Oahu that might be interested. We're having a tough time, finding somebody that we want to bring on. So I said, sure. So I flew over there. I met with the development guys running the place here, Dewan Rivers, and we kind of talked about, who was in the market and who were good candidates that I thought would be good candidates that I knew personally that we could approach just to help them out. And he says, oh, well, let's take you through the whole hotel, because I never really dipped into the whole thing, exactly what they're doing, right? Kind of just dismissed it as, because Marriott was like, I'm going to move all over. And
so it's like Puppet Dog closing you a little bit or something. Right?
Well,
is that what's going on here, or what?
Come to find out, that's kind of what happened, right? They kind of bait and switched me a little bit, but nonetheless, it paid. I'm happy for it. They were very smart, and I appreciate them doing that. But yeah, so what really caught me was how much effort they're going to put into perpetuating the culture of Hawaii in a very true, authentic, and genuine way. And as they went through the program about how they're going to go about it, whether it be the flora, the fauna, the story, the art, the a bar where they're only going to speak Hawaiian language, and how they're building a hotel on the fabric. I mean, it was all very immersive into the culture, to a point where I'm like, man, this is going to be really hard to sustain. I've seen guys go down this route, and it's very difficult to sustain, especially in hard times. People start to pull back. And so, they said, we're committed, and, the people we've been talking to in the community. And so that was even more impressive. They actually were doing their research, their homework, and they dug deep into it. And I give them all the credit in the world, because they did pretty much everything they said they were going to do and more, and continue to do it and sustain their commitment to that culture and the perpetuation of the culture as a portal to share it with the rest of the world. And it's been an insanely successful resort ever since. And so I'm super blessed that I had the opportunity to, go to Disney and spend 15 years with them at Aulani and on the West Coast. So super grateful for the opportunity.
So when was the point you decided, okay, I'm going to come on? How did that work?
So we went through the process of the property itself. And as I got more intently interested in it, I kind of came around to saying, this is going to change the whole benchmark of how hospitality is going to be dealt with in Hawaii, and what the impact that's going to have with regard to how we play into our culture and our home here, right, and our cultural community, and how the hospitality is going to represent it. And we're going to set a new benchmark. This could be it. This company could be at the precipice of doing this for our hospitality, which is kind of what my dream would have been from the beginning. When we did the first, not to digress, but when I was at the Travel Industry Management School, George Elliot was still alive, and he actually had a class there that he started. It was the first of its kind. I forget what we called it, but we were the first class. And so we took this class with him and created the curriculum and really tried to ingrain in an option where we can blend our Hawaiian culture and hospitality industry together as one, and it be copacetic and reciprocal. And it's difficult.
You mean like in an authentic way?
In a very authentic
and not
way.
Just like,
correct. And not just
caricature kind
of. It's just not paint on the wall
Yeah.
and short stories, but a real way to create that reciprocity between the culture and the industry, and so that it flows in the right way, and we manage it the right way, and we share it the right way, and so forth. So anyway, getting back to Disney, I saw that light come back up in my head and said, wow, this could be it, Dr. Kanahele's dream could be coming true in light of what they're doing here, and this could be the future. And if we can get others to grab hold of this and see the value that is there by investing that much effort and money and time into the culture and sharing it in a more genuine way. And so that was the hook for me. It kind of took me back to college, took me back to those days hanging out with him and learning about that and how we potentially could do that. And I think we've done it in that space. I think we really were able to accomplish something meaningful in that light. I'd love to see more of it into the future. We're the first resort that was built since the one next to us at Aulani in 1988 were the first like true resort property, because it's really tough to build new resorts and start things from the beginning, because that's kind of what it takes. You start from the beginning and you set a culture there of that sort to create a space that you can be successful at doing that. It's hard to go back to a resort unless you close it and, you know, restart it to get there, right? Because the culture is kind of ingrained in the other resorts. Not to say that others don't do it well. I just think that if you're going to do it at that level, it's more difficult to do unless you start from fresh.
Yeah, it's almost like, just like a renovation otherwise.
Yeah. It's more about the people than the place in that sense, with regard to creating that culture. Yeah.
So was it hard to leave Kauai?
It was very hard to leave Kauai.
What did they say?
They weren't happy about it, but, you know, and it was a risk for me because I'm leaving what was, you know, the most established hotel company in the world. I mean, that was my career. I was going to be hotel and move around and work in that space. And Marriott was the best at it, you know, and still probably is the best at it as far as hotel companies are concerned. But yeah, I took a leap of faith and jumped on to a company that, you know, I can tell you after 15 years, it's just amazing. And yeah, fantastic. It was the best decision I ever made.
With your 15-year history so far at Disney, if you could only remember one experience or story, what would it be?
There's so many, but I'd probably say the day of opening Aulani, there's a lot of work that went into it and a lot of time, you know, away from the family. So I did come and had a moment with the family. And then my grandmother passed away, like literally 2 or 3 days before the opening. And so that was, you know, I was a little probably more emotional than normal. And so I brought the family over, and then just that time before we opened and let everybody come into the resort, and that time to meditate and reflect on all that went on was probably the most meaningful time for me before we opened.
Which grandmother was it?
My mom's mom, Helen. Yeah, she was 99, fantastic shape, just fell and just died suddenly. Yeah, it was very unfortunate. Yeah, we were super close. Grew up with them, you know, throughout my childhood. Yeah. But yeah, it was very cool. But there's many instances of just phenomenal memories I have working at Aulani, and it really centers around all the people. You know, we employed at the height, I want to say about 1,600. I think we now have maybe 14 or 1,500 out there. And just the relationships you make over time with all those people are just fantastic. I mean, there have been families that have grown up at that resort over the 15 years, so many kids that have been born. And, you know, we'd also made a huge commitment to the West Side to hire from out there and commit to that. And I think we've had a great impact in that community. And the families that are with Aulani are, you know, I think, you know, super stoked and way better off around where they are today versus when they started with Aulani.
And what happened after that then? You started it, you built it, you run it, and then you move to a different role?
So after 5 years of running that resort, they had asked me to go ahead and oversee California, the Disneyland properties. So they have 3 properties out there. And so what they wanted me to do is move to California, because there's big properties, at 2,000 room properties, another 500 room property for sake of total to 2,500 rooms. And they just crank, right? They're just super busy. And so the thought was to move to California and oversee this from there. And, you know, I'm super grateful because I had countered them and said, hey, listen, I would love to take on those 3 properties and oversee California, but I really am committed to raising my kids here in Hawaii. I'd have a hard time moving my family to LA, away from their family at this moment in time, and change it all up. And so they were very gracious and allowed me to work from here and travel back and forth to LA to oversee those resorts in LA. Yeah. And then we built another 350 room timeshare resort, DVC resort in Disneyland at the same time.
Oh, so there's 4 now?
There's 4 now, 4 towers. Yeah, we built one more.
The Star Wars one then? Or?
No, the Star Wars one is in Orlando. They built that in Orlando. Oh. Yeah. Now, this is just a Disney Vacation Club tower right next to the Disneyland hotel. Yeah.
So on a scale like 0 to 10, how hard was that to manage?
You know, it's hard because it's in LA. It's a whole different culture for the most part than from Hawaii that we know. But, you know, the fortunate part of it, while it was extraordinarily busy, like it runs in the 90% plus all the time, it's constantly moving. There's a lot of rooms, a lot of restaurants. There's just a whole lot more going on there. We had a great team. And the one thing that I got to say that with Disney, I've worked for 13 different leaders throughout my time. and just the quality leadership and their commitment to development and support of their businesses is just phenomenal. So while it was difficult to manage a change, we had such great support, such great resources. My team on the ground there, which we developed over time, became an incredible team that is now still managing it there. So we built up a great team over time. We went through COVID, which was really tough. But while it was difficult in the beginning to get it going, it became a really well-run business after a couple of years or so.
Do you see any similarities in like Hawaiian culture and then Disney corporate culture?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of similarities. We blended cultures here a little bit as far as the value set. I really wanted to have a set of values here that were more relevant to Hawaii and understandable by our people than bringing in a full corporate set of values. But the overlap is very much the same, right? They very much care about the people. They care about their work environment. They care about their career development. They care about having the right set of values and doing the right thing and being transparent, being collaborative. A lot of similarities to that. I think in Hawaii, the family part of it probably takes a deeper root, right? I think coming to work and really, this is your family. Like you have a stake, this is your property. It takes a little bit of a deeper layer than probably in the mainland.
Like more kuleana.
More kuleana, but more ownership. More like this is my place, and so I'm going to care for this. And this person working next to me, I know in the community, and there's more palina there than the mainland. Is more transactional. It's so big. There's so many people. The location, people live all over the place, right? So there's not as that palina that you have here in Hawaii, but the overall culture of Disney is one that's very family-oriented, very caring. Yeah, it's been great. And I think that was key, right, to the success, at least my success, because it's hard to operate in a corporate environment that wouldn't have been like that. I would have struggled, frankly, and they wouldn't have been able to support what we're trying to accomplish here with regard to setting that culture and setting that environment, unless they were also in line or aligned with it, right? So it was super important.
So then when did it come about that you started your own company?
I've always had this in the back of my mind, this little entrepreneurial spirit in me to get something going on my own. And I wanted to be in the same vein of hospitality. And so we've been gnawing on it, myself and a few colleagues of mine over time, been talking about it, where the entry point might be, what the opportunities might look like, and how it might come about. I've been jotting down ideas here and there and looking at opportunities, looking at timing, seeing how things are lining up. And so as this is going on, the Christmas prior to this, I asked my daughter what she wanted for Christmas. She's not very materialistic. She doesn't ask for a whole lot, birthdays or whatever. She says, Dad, I just want you to be home. All right, so it just triggered for me, wow, okay. Both my kids, my daughter Taylor and my son Connor, we spend great times together, very close. And so it was more meaningful around her just having me home because I traveled all the time for work, almost every month, gone for like a week at least. And then there's other things that I do outside of that for work that I got to leave for, meetings, whatever. So it's basically time. And she just was tired of me not being at home and spending time with them. So that was a big moment for me there. And so I started really thinking about, okay, this is my time. I got to move on and see what of these things are going to work out and how the timing lines up. And so sure enough, things kind of lined up pretty well. And so I transitioned. I had to plan this transition over this past August. And then partnering up with Jerry Gibson, who's also, well-known hotelier here in town and with Marriott and Hyatt and Hilton. Yeah, so we set a path and put the business plan together and launched it. And so, I finished up with Disney this past March. Hired my predecessor on the mainland. Recent, yeah.
Yeah.
In the last 6 months, hired us. They split the job back up. There's one person leading LA, and then one, Kimberly Agas, who's here, is leading Aulani. So we launched it. We haven't come out with a PR release yet, but that's forthcoming in like a couple of weeks or so. Wanted to give a little space. But yeah, so I'm excited. Jerry and I are excited. We have a group of us, a consortium, if you want to call it that we're going to be working with to move the company forward. And so we're really happy. Yeah.
So in a nutshell, what do you do? What do you offer?
So we're asset managers. So what we do is we will work with primarily the owners of the resorts or hotels and help them, improve their management of the resorts, whether it be with the brands that they have there, in operations, in sales and marketing and revenue, general strategy, if any kind of new development, any of those areas to add value to the ownership in a meaningful way, and then also help them manage the management team that are already in place and help them become even better, right? And
Help them manage their internal management team, or help them manage the managing company like a Marriott?
it could be both. So sometimes they're independently managed by a group, and so we'll go in and just help them look
Oh,
at
you mean
different
their operations?
things.
You sit between owner and operator.
Correct. Or the management, or the corporate management, whether it be Marriott or Hyatt or whatever. And we'll sit in between the ownership and the management group to help add even more value to the performance.
Is that a common type of company? Like there's a bunch of them out there that do the kind of same thing, or no?
There are a bunch of them, primarily in the domestic U.S. There really isn't any asset management company in Hawaii focused on Hawaii, particularly. There's a few folks out there that are consultants who do this, here and there for just specific groups, but not a company that's full-fledged, full-time, position to do just asset management, hospitality, restaurants, etc. Yeah. So it is, filling a gap, I think, that we have here in Hawaii.
In a nutshell, what would you say the mission is?
The mission for us from a business standpoint is to create value for the ownership groups that we work for. No matter where we do create that value, but it's creating better value, creating better performance for their assets, creating better connectivity to the community, creating a better environment for their employees and for the management groups that we work for. I mean, those are the key pieces that we're going to focus on as we go. And again, we're deeply rooted in Hawaii. All our partners are deeply rooted in Hawaii. So we understand this place, we understand the people, we understand the culture, we understand the industry, right? And I think bringing it all together is going to be how we're going to focus our efforts.
So like the business and financial mission is adding value to the stakeholders and ownership.
That's correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what would be the HUNA mission that lies under that?
Well, I think it's really getting back to creating a relationship with the community, because I think right now, fortunately, unfortunately, the hospitality industry is the number one industry in Hawaii outside of government. And while I'd love to see it diversify outside of that into different areas that I think we have a lot of opportunity to take advantage of, and I can get into that as well. But without getting down that road, right now we really have to be careful about taking care of that industry and having to ensure that there is a better relationship between the community and the industry so that we can continue to support it and support the GDP that it develops, at least in the short term and hopefully for the long term, because I don't think it's going to weigh, materially into the future, and have a much more reciprocal relationship, because it's going to be important for the community's sake and for the industry's sake. I think it's a very symbiotic relationship that has to be created there.
That's because that's how it takes care of the community?
It takes care of the community, obviously, because of the financial deliverables that comes back with jobs, with healthcare, with infrastructure improvements, and everything that it entails, tax revenues, right? And I think it's important that at the same time it's delivering and not being extractive to the community, right? And I think part and parcel of it is the way it's managed policy-wise. So what's happened, and the reason why I think the industry's been painted, unfortunately, not well, is because of the huge amount of transient vacation rentals that's been out there. So we're topping off at 10 million, right, visitors a year now. We haven't built another room in this place since Aulani. And so our room count has not gone up. But yet the visitor count has gone through the roof from what was, I think, 8.5 to 10. And that's all transient, right? It's all transient vacation rentals outside of the infrastructure that was created to manage tourism in the right way. And I think that part of it needs to be managed better, because they're in our communities, they're overriding our infrastructure, they're not in the spaces that they should be, they're overwhelming our natural resources in some degree. And it's because we're mismanaging it. And when I say we, I think it's all of us, because it really comes from policy and procedure making. We do want to influence and create connectivity to the ownership groups that we represent, their employees, the community in general. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's very true. We definitely want to influence that in the right way, because really at the end of the day, it's creating that environment that we have at Aulani. It's really creating the culture of wellness, the culture of inclusivity, collaboration, ownership. And when you have that, that's a differentiation that Hawaii has. You're not going to find that pretty much anywhere else in the world, is that true sense of genuine hospitality that we provide to. I mean, you get it here and there, but I don't think it's deeply rooted as it is here. And if you do it really, really well, people will keep coming, and they'll keep coming for the right reasons. And it's not surf and sand. It's not that. They're coming for the people. And that's how it started. That's why people came to Hawaii. It was beautiful. It was a hell of a long trip. But the people, the culture is what kept them coming back. It was that kindness. It was all of that graciousness of our people that created the differentiation that made us more appealing than any place else in the world. And it's still true. But it's harder and harder to deliver because it has to be reciprocal, right? It has to be this give and take. So our value systems at Aulani, we have Olo, we have Malama, we have Kuleana, but we don't have Aloha in there. And the reason for that is Aloha is something that you really have to give of yourself, like down deep. It's not something you just readily give away because it has to be reciprocated. If it's not reciprocated, in my mind at least, it doesn't fill you back up. And then you become emptied of it. And then it becomes very generic. And then you lose that genuine hospitality feeling that people get when they come. So, I always tell our folks out there that, we, in the business of hospitality, you have to provide hospitality because that's our jobs. If you want to go and you create a relationship with a guest that's deeper than that, and you can feel that aloha coming from them, by all means, you want to extend it. Because they always ask, why isn't aloha in there? And I tell them, that's your decision to make, not mine. You have to figure out when you want to flip that switch and say, I'm going to give a little bit more to this person because I'm feeling like they're giving it back to me and I have that respect. And so that's kind of the same feeling I have. Like, you have to create that space for them to do that. And that's powerful stuff, man. That's like why they come back to Hawaii.
So how would you define aloha? Like, what does it mean to you?
I think it's a deeply rooted, you go through the ha and the whole spirituality of the breath and taking the breath, the literal part of it. To me, it's the spirituality of giving of yourself. It has many degrees to me. And I think it goes back to that part of it. Like, aloha is love, it's caring, it's spiritual. And I think it's something that is within all of us that you can give. But you also have to receive it. It's like love, right? People need to be loved. And that's part of it. That's the aloha to me. It's in everybody. But, you have to find it. You have to understand what it is and how much you can give of it. And you have to love yourself first because you can't give it aloha and give that spirit out to anyone else unless you got yourself, right? It goes beyond the word to me with regard to what it means. It's more spiritual than it is really literal in my mind.
So tell me a little bit more on the spiritual.
Well, it's deeply rooted. I think it's something inside you that develops again from how you were brought up and that gift that you're given from your parents and your grandparents and your family and your friends. All of that love and that aloha that you take in is what you reciprocate out. And that's how you can give of yourself. And that aloha, that spirit of giving, that spirit of life that emits out of you is really that spiritual side of it. Like, it's really deep in there. It's not something that's surface, right? It's something that you really think about and it dwells in you there. That's developed over time. And like I said, you have to keep getting it. And so you can give it back to others, right? But yeah, I think it's a very deeply rooted part of the value system that I think everybody has in them, especially here in Hawaii. And obviously the name, the word itself, everybody has a different feeling when you say it and when they feel it. And one of many words in the Hawaiian language that bring different feelings about. And I don't call it generic, but it's a very common, word that everybody uses. But I think it's very much more deeply rooted in some than others. And I do take it pretty seriously and thus represent it differently when I speak to it, especially with my employees or others. Then I share that with, yeah.
Were you friends with Pono Shim? Did you know Pono Shim?
Yeah, I know Pono.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when Pono explained to me like aloha, then I like the way he explained it. It resonated well. And he said that like alo, like in the presence of, right? And then ha, which is our breath, right? So, but breath meaning more like spiritual, like this is our spirit, my energy. I come in at birth, I take a breath, I'm alive. Last thing happens, I stop taking a breath and my body is gone, right? So it's that life force, the energy, your spirit, your soul in the presence of. And then when he explained it, he said that, when the, I don't know what you call them, the white people came to Hawaii, shaking hands was like, I don't have a weapon, right? So it's like no ha, right?
No breath. Yeah.
No breath, which I don't know if this is just
holy,
right?
Yeah.
Whereas Native Hawaiians would greet with kind of a honi and share breath,
right?
The sharing of breath,
right? And
I like that kind of explanation.
Yeah, I love that meaning. I just think there's degrees of it,
Yeah.
And
that's why it's the sharing. When you say, I cannot just keep giving, because otherwise it's like, it's the sharing of breath. We're in the
Yes.
presence of each other. You can't just be like,
Right.
you know, you need the other side.
The other side. Yeah. And, it depends on who you're with, right? And how much aloha they have and how much they're willing to give. And maybe it's not their time. And so I think it shifts and ebbs a lot. But it's a great learning, though, to understand it and to realize what it is and appreciate it and give it when you can and, live around it. I think it's fantastic.
I think that's what I try to do in this space. You know what I mean? I think that's what it is. It's a sharing of ha. Some is more, some is less. And when it's like being reciprocated in a meaningful and like generous way, then it's intoxicating.
It is. Yeah. You can get into it, man. You can get deep into it. It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then especially if you take it to a place that's even more intoxicating, then it becomes even more deep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
What would you say is your deepest kind of experience of that? Then like where you say take it to another, like.
I was thinking place like Waipio or someplace that
same.
brings out that deeper feeling. And probably anything with regard to family pretty much brings out the biggest and deepest feelings for me. Just meditating around people's lives and who you spent time with and those types of things pretty much kind of resonate with me the most. And, people who meant a lot to you over lifetime is to me the areas that get me probably more deeply focused on it and really kind of retrospective, looking at how important it was and how you can change your life to be better than where you are now, given what others have done in time and their sacrifices and the lessons
who
learned.
would that be in your life, your entire life?
My mom primarily is probably the biggest person in my life by a long shot. I mean, just the amount of time I spent with her, because my dad died early. Died when I was 18. So while he was an incredible impact, my mom's been by my side.
She's still alive?
Still alive and still, spent a ton of time with her. So she shaped me a lot. My grandparents, same. Kind of grew up with them as well primarily on my mom's side. So they really spent a lot of time with them as my dad working, through school. So coming home late, spent a ton of time with my grandfather and my grandmother. Shaped me tremendously, their values and work ethic and sacrifice and just how they did things and common sense and all the good stuff that you don't learn unless you spend with your grandparents.
With your grandparents, you could only take one memory or experience with them. Everything else you forget.
Their love, yeah. They were just, unconditionally there for you, physically, mentally, spiritually, just constantly loving on you your whole life. That's for me. Especially through, challenges that you have through life, they were the backstop. Like no matter what was happening in time, they were there for you. They're going to just love you no matter what.
One time in particular that you're okay to share?
I mean, my mom and dad went through a divorce. And so through that period of time, I was living with my grandma and grandpa. And so just, it's always tough on kids. And so myself and my sister. And so just their support and their willingness, and they're older, right? So you're talking, they're in their late 70s, early 80s, with 2 kids in the house and just driving us to school and making us breakfast.
So they kind of hanai'd you guys.
Hanai'd us over for a little bit as they were getting through stuff. And I mean, that meant the world to me, gave you that foundation where, no matter what happens, you're going to be okay. You get through it. And yeah, it's amazing.
Can you share a story about one of them or both of them that gives us a context?
So, like, my grandma was pretty much a homemaker, just, a firecracker. But my grandfather's worked, so he was a plantation guy, worked his way through the plantation. And he also, I think he went to school, I want to say in Hakalau, but he basically walked to school, 10 miles a day or something crazy, back and forth to school. I think he got through the 8th grade or whatever and then went to work. But just a man's man, rodeo, cowboy, all different aspects. He could fix anything, mechanic. I mean, just a Renaissance man of the day. So just an inspiration to see what's possible, even back then when they really had nothing, out in the middle of nowhere, to just see the perseverance and the character of these people who lived with, much different than where we're living now. They just made it happen and worked hard, right? They just sacrificed a ton for the betterment of the family, right? It's really to get your family to the next level, to get them so that they don't have to work as hard, but hopefully have the same work ethic, which I think we're struggling with now. But yeah, he just was an amazing man and just sacrificed for his family left and right every day. Yeah, it's amazing.
How about for your mom then? What would be a story you could share that would help me understand like who she is to you.
Gosh, there's so many stories. My mom, same story with regard to just her overall sacrifice for the family. She was a great teacher. I mean, she would just bend backwards for her kids. Like her kids would come to school. Many times we would go to school if we had a holiday or we were sick, so we just stayed in her classroom. And so her kids would come in and, maybe no lunch or barefoot or whatever. And she would bring them food and, take care of them after school until maybe the parents couldn't come till late. But she would just put in her heart and soul into her kids. I mean, just every day, whatever it was, the kids might come in battered sometimes, and she would, console them and talk to the parents and see what's going on and see if they could rectify it or put them into a safe place or take them to their grandma's house or, small town, right? So she would just be constantly trying to improve the lives of their kids. And those kids were tough back then, the plantation times, came from very little from the plantation camps, and it was tough to see. But she took what was there and did the best for them and created a safe space for them that was a great learning environment too. And a lot of those kids, came out of that and did really well. It was a changing point. Just her class for that 1 year changed the kids for life. Even some of my classmates actually, who she tutored to become better students who were maybe not doing so well. She would step in my house, like I'd be sleeping, done to stuff, homework, 9:00. She'd be up tutoring my classmates like 12 o'clock at night, to get them to pass, this test or that test, because they wanted to go to college, and they had to get their grades up, and she would just stay up with them, and tutor them. There's many wonderful times I've spent with my mom in graduations and some of her retirement when she finally retired from teaching, and my daughter's birth when she first came and met my daughter at the hospital. Just it's incredibly awesome moments.
So then would that be kind of your definition of aloha?
Yeah, it's giving, right?
Sharing,
it's
right?
Contributing. Yeah, it's giving back. Totally. Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think it's really understanding your time and when you have to step up and deliver for those who you love and sacrifice, right? Yeah, and she's sacrificed for us her whole life, incredibly.
Yeah. Because that's sharing that spiritual energy in a vulnerable space.
Yeah, I mean, your mom, as you could tell from what I experienced, was that same person, I believe, right?
I don't know if I was ever really my mom's, like, until the end, maybe like her backbone. You know what I mean? My mom was always ours. Even after she's gone, she's still ours. You know what I mean? I mean, in many, many very tangible ways, they still taking care of me. So it's like, yeah. My mom was always never say nothing, only child. Yeah. Children should be seen and not heard. And she just does what she can for her family, saying nothing about it.
That's amazing how much love that you guys have for her and the family, though, man. It was overwhelming. It was pretty awesome to see. Yeah. I
remember when I did this Greater Good Radio thing the first time, and we did about 170 interviews.
Wow.
And I thought, I don't know who posed the question to me, but it was like, who's your biggest mentor or so on? And I thought about it. I was thinking in terms of those people, right? But when it comes down to it, it's really my mom. I mean, my dad too, because he's, a little bit more loud and stuff. But that's really more my mom. And I noticed that now after she's gone, it's always like, oh, shoot, let me ask my mom. Nah, I can't ask my mom. I can't ask my mom. And I know
she can ask, by the way.
I ask, and she'll be like, see, I told you. You don't like listen. You don't like listen.
Yeah, it's whether you listen or not. That's the other key
You're not listening.
Component.
Like, I told you how many times. Like, but, how old is your mom?
My mom is 83.
And it's still pretty healthy?
Yeah, she's pretty healthy.
Yeah, I mean, that's a blessing right there.
It really is, man. Yeah, she was at our house last night having dinner, and she's a whippersnapper, man. Love it.
That's why, I mean, when people talk about it, I was talking to a friend of mine, I think last year, and we were talking about our parents getting older and so on, and how much time he got. And he said, I maybe have a number of years left. And I said, no, not really. You don't. He goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, if you think about it, you live in the mainland. So how often are you visiting? He's like, oh, I visit, every year, maybe every other year. I said, how long are you here? I try to come for at least a week. I said, and when you're here for that week, where do you stay? Oh, we're staying in a hotel. And so I said, so in that week that you're here, how many hours are you spending together? So, oh man, actually, if you put it that way, it's, these certain number of hours. I said, you're talking about hours.
Yeah.
You're not talking about years, bro.
Yeah.
You're talking hours. Sometimes it might be minutes, you know what I mean? Because nobody knows. So when you think about it that way,
It's a good point. It's a good point.
you're not talking about years.
Yeah. That's put well. Yeah. It's good advice, man.
So if this was like, when we had that missile alert, this was the last time, boom, it's done, right? You could leave a message to your wife. What would you say? Because the thing only hits us. Yeah.
Obviously, I would tell her that I love her and thank her and for our children and for being such a wonderful mother and to be, grateful and that we'll see you in heaven one day. But to be happy and live life to the best and take care of our kids and keep praying, and we'll see you in the next land. We've had some great moments. Obviously, probably the best moments we've ever had is the birth of our kids, man. You just can't beat those moments in life when you have a daughter and son and just holding them for the first time with your wife. It's just epic. I can't even express. Honestly, for those who have not been able to have kids, it's just a joy that to me is so unique that I've never experienced before. It's just one of the greatest things you can experience as a human being, I think.
Plus, we're not the ones that had to give the birth.
That's very true.
I mean,
That's very true.
Yeah.
I would not want to be in that position.
Yeah. I couldn't handle. I would not be able to handle that.
Yeah, no doubt, man.
How about for your kids? What's your favorite memory with them?
My kids has always been, outdoors. I go back to I go back to Waipio. I take my kids down there and we just have the most glorious time on the water. And it's always places that I'm unreachable, right? Because through our business, you're just constantly on the phone or being distracted by this or that. And we have a 24-hour business. So whenever I get to a place where I'm untethered is the best time. So Waipio, we've had some great moments down there, throughout the last few years. Every time we go up to the mountains, we go skiing again, those areas where it's just concentrated on them, us as a family. Those have been always the precious moments that we've had. Others that have incorporated Disney obviously have been wonderful because we've taken a few Disney cruises. And again, just being in that, environment of Disney with the family has been great. And then with their grandparents, with my mom, just having the 3 generations together is always good. And even with Ruth's mom and parents and their cousins and all that. Anytime you get together with family and it's concentrated on just that time in the presence has been wonderful moments for our kids. Yeah.
So what would you say is the thing you admire the most about your daughter?
Her tenacity. She's just persevering and tenacious about whatever she does. And, I just love it. She'll fight for what she wants. And when I think about her, I think about that. I just think, and she also has an incredibly vibrant spirit. Like she's vibrant, And she has a good soul. She has a good base too. I think that's another attribute that I think will treat her well. She's very spiritually connected when she slows down. But yeah, those are the attributes I think that ring true for me.
How about for your son?
My son's the most kind-hearted person. He wears his heart on his sleeve. And he's just a kind soul. And he's an old soul. Yeah, and he just loves to love. The guy is a lover. I just love it. I mean, we both kind of just loving each other every day. Obviously, just exudes, that love for others, and he's just a very kind spirit.
Well, I appreciate you, and I want to acknowledge you for all of the things that you've done for our community, your family, and I'm really interested to see how this other piece comes through and any things from that, because that was mind-blowing to me today.
Yeah, I'm going to look into that. That is super interesting. So I can't wait to dig into that, man, and see what lies under that.
Yeah.
Under those meanings, man. That should be fantastic.
Yeah.
If you resonate with Greater Good Radio, please join our community at www.greatergoodradio.com, where you can get access to exclusive content and offerings. Hope to see you soon.